gifted and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
First things first.
Things first, it's the DU General, Money P. I'ma put you up on the schedule, 6 to 9, 8 weekdays, not to unsettle you. Let's go. We got a lot to talk about, so much to pedal through. Unapologetically progressive. Tune to KBLA 1580 to get the mess. We're your ancestors' favorite radio station. First black on talk radio, left side of the nation. Me and Dominique DePrima go way back. Tag Smiley making sure the station stays black. Discussing all the issues in our community. We're hosted black and brown and others find unity. So let's talk about it. Maybe we can improve it. Digital underground, always down with the movement. So we tune in. The first things first with the queen of Black Talk Radio, Dominique DePrima. Go sis. Go sis.
First things first.
KBLA Talk 1580. Good morning and God bless. I'm Dominique DePrima. The show is First Things First. My first thing every single day, giving thanks, giving praises, and asking for blessings from God, asking for the blessings of the ancestors and the elders. And let's go. Hour one, we do local. Hour two, we go national, international, and beyond. And in the final hour of the show, we do a deep dive with a person of interest or a topic of interest. Today, we're doing a double header. We are going to be learning about African-American maternal mortality and how to fight that in the first half of the last hour of the show with Bianca Dickerson. And then we'll be talking with Skip Townsend of Second Call, checking in on the urban peace movement and taking a look back at the impact on that movement of Harry Belafonte. Rest in peace, Harry Belafonte, the great actor and activist, also artist, musical artist. All that is going on today, but we're starting out strong. He's a journalist, a producer, a film documentarian, and a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. My partner in politics this morning is James Farr. Welcome.
Good morning, Dominique. How are you?
I'm blessed. How are you doing?
You know, I'm just enjoying a cup of coffee this morning and just sitting back, minding my own black business, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that's working out well for you, James. You're a busy guy. I mean, aside from, working in film and documentaries, as an activist, you're always writing. And one of the places that you write for is the Los Angeles Progressive. In that role, I'm assuming, because, that's where you reside, that you've spent a lot of time tracking policing in that corner of LA, the Pasadena, Altadena area, which, you don't hear about it as much on the national news and sometimes not even local, but it's a pretty influential and significant part of Southern California.
It absolutely is, Dominic. And as we kind of unpack and get more into this independent review of the Anthony McClain homicide by Pasadena police officer Edwin Duma-Gwendon, I think your audience will appreciate while this may be a micro of the greater Los Angeles, there's a macro story here that I think the listeners will be interested in learning about, and how some of these things can apply if they are also monitoring their local law enforcement agency.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. One of the things when we talk about law enforcement is how these issues do seem to be very similar, coast to coast. I mean, it's one of the sad things, striking things about this, the conversation about how you reimagine law enforcement is how the problems are so uniform across the country. But as far as Pasadena goes, lots of rich people there, lots of beautiful real estate, housing, definitely a have and have not situation. But I think when we think of Pasadena, we think, Rose Bowl and the quaint little, downtown area. And maybe people don't focus on the goings on inside of the Pasadena Police Department. But when we do, it's kind of jarring because it seems like such a cute little town. Why would they have such an out-of-control law enforcement agency?
Well, I mean, I think the short answer is law enforcement mirrors law enforcement, as you kind of alluded to earlier. And as my film partner and I, Dennis Haywood, documented in Thorns on the Rose, Pasadena is a beautiful city, but there are some thorns here, right? And we see them systemically. We see them sometimes overtly. And, really, once we really unpack this, I'm of the belief in the position that our city council, our mayor, our vice mayor should be absolutely embarrassed and ashamed that our tax dollars are funding this type of work product. That's what this report tells us. And so I think some of the residents want a refund.
And we'll get into more what James Farr is talking about regarding the report. We haven't introduced that yet for folks who aren't steady watchers of what goes on in Pasadena, or steady readers of James' work for the LA Progressive. There is a report that is meant to show the state of policing there in Pasadena, and you've done a really interesting job of contrasting that with the PR, right? It's not a Talking Point Tuesday, but every day is a Talking Point Tuesday. So we have what the Pasadena Police Department says about itself, their aspirational statements, maybe you could call it their mission statement, compared with what the report is saying is actually going on.
Yeah, it's, there's this culture in our police department. It's really a double entendre for the greater Pasadena, but it is called the Pasadena way. And as you alluded to, and I won't, read it in depth, but, we exist to serve the community. How we get the job done is just as important as getting the job done. We believe in the personal touch. That's interesting, right? We are proactive. We are firm. We are fair but firm, And so these are some of their, if you will, values as a department. But when we kind of juxtapose that to this report, we're going to see a totally different level of unprofessionalism, as well as, I would expect, the residents expect that our police department is going to thoroughly investigate. And so when we see a report lambaste the department as inadequate, their investigations are artificial, they have shortcomings, they rush things, these are all very, very troubling signals that there's really a problem here.
We're talking with James Farr. He's a reporter located in Pasadena, a journalist. He's also a social entrepreneur and a filmmaker. And when we come forward, I want to break down why you say what you say and why it's surprising. I know you, James Farr, have covered policing issues nationwide, not just here on the West Coast, and certainly not only in Pasadena. But this seems to be something that, you really are kind of, I don't want to say shook because I'm sure you expected it, but really incensed by. So I want to talk about why that is and why are there so many names from that one small city that we know, because they have joined the tragic club of people whose lives have been taken by police. That the group of hashtags is pretty long for a tiny city. We'll look at that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward.
The Los Angeles Urban League and Parkside Economic Development Corporation are working to close the wealth gap between black and white households. BWARP, the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program's free virtual workshops will help your family acquire, gain, maintain, and pass down legacy wealth. Learn from the experts about making more with what you have, the Black history of money, joining the Smart Investors Club, preserving your assets in tough times, crypto, cash in or cash out, the wealthy mind and body. Register for this free series that could change your financial future at laul.org/BWAARP. Don't miss BWARP, the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program, every second and fourth Thursday in February, March, and April at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Register now at laul.org/BWAARP.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency on earth. And if you owe back taxes, the news isn't good. The IRS is raising the interest rate it charges on unpaid taxes, and further rate hikes are expected. Most people don't know it, but the IRS adds interest charges on your tax debt daily. So if you owe the IRS today, you will owe even more tomorrow. And it doesn't stop until you get right with the IRS. The good news is, getting right can start with one phone call to Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax relief firm. Optima's tax professionals specialize in the Fresh Start Initiative, a powerful IRS program that can save you thousands if you qualify. In fact, the experts at Optima Tax have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients. Call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the Evan-On, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time-to-talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominic DePrima right now.
Right now, we're talking with James Farr. He's the co-founder of the Pasadena African American Film Foundation, but that's not what we're talking about. He's a journalist, producer, and a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. So let's explain what this report is and why it matters.
It matters, Dominic. Just earlier this week, our city released an independent police report, review of the August 15, 2020 homicide of Anthony McClain. Anthony McClain was a passenger in a vehicle that stopped itself after being tailed by police. Mr. McClain was ordered out of the car, and within seconds of him exiting the car, Mr. McClain fled the scene. After that is where it gets all kind of sketchy and where the community is continuing to have more and more questions, which we'll get into in this report. But the report essentially challenges the officer's account. It challenges the administrative review. It challenges the criminal investigation. It really shows things like the officer was able to move about the crime scene unsequestered, unsupervised, and then very troubling, a union representative who was also on scene is also the same officer that recovered the alleged gun that Officer Duma Gwendon, the shooter, saw, I guess, looking through Anthony's back, him discard a gun. And so the location of the gun is problematic. The evidence and the way that it was collected, that's also problematic. But more importantly, Dominic, this situation was preventable. And it was preventable if the department would take the steps to either reduce or eliminate pretextual stops. How many times do we see pretextual stops ending with someone being, beaten, Christopher Ballou in Pasadena, shot Anthony McClain in the back? So these are some very, very strong concerns that we have here in the community.
Right. And I mean, that's something that supposedly the LAPD did, and we have seen a decrease since, LA Metro was supposed to stop doing that. Of course, they still do it to a point. But is there a movement afoot to make that happen in Pasadena?
There's a movement across the nation. There has been extensive research that has been performed. Statistics say that pretextual stops is not a preventative crime measure. Although police will tell you, there's always that salacious story of someone being apprehended by a hunch, right? But what we see routinely is equipment violations being the precursor, right, for that officer to make contact legally and justified, but it tends to end up being a fishing expedition. So in this instance, the two officers were directed by their leadership and city leadership to patrol the area to deter gang violence and allegedly some shootings that were happening in the area. So they were out targeting, they were out hunting. Mr. McClain had only been in that car for, I believe, less than 5 or 10 minutes. He was just getting a ride somewhere, and, it all ends in this way. But what we also knew, Dominique, is back in October of 2021, through some gumshoe investigative reporting, I was able to come across a document that the city's outside counsel did not properly file. So the public was aware because I made the public aware of everything that was in that police report and all of the witness statements. The problem with that is the mishandling of it by our city attorney's office and their outside counsel is not only did they jeopardize the safety and the lives of witnesses, they also jeopardized the greater public. I had to be concerned because I was the only one with the information, which is why I made it public. And so in that information, you saw Social Security numbers, you saw names, you saw addresses, you saw way more information than the city would have liked to have out publicly. I still not have gotten an answer on how they rectified that, but it did expose the public, in addition to, obviously, the homicide of Mr. McClain.
Right. So in this report, just to be clear, is the Office of Independent Review report about what the Pasadena Police Department did or did not do in the investigation of their killing of Anthony McClain. So just for those who don't keep up, explain what the Office of Independent Review is.
The Office of Independent Review, interesting enough, was also engaged by the city over 12 years ago, a case you may be familiar with, Leroy Barnes and Kendrick McDade. One of the part of their job is to thoroughly evaluate all of the data, the evidence, the recordings, everything, right? Crime scene, everything, and then compile an independent review based on their professional judgment of how the individual officer performed, how the administrative process happened, what the discipline is, and then make recommendations. The Office of Independent Review made recommendations 12 years ago that the department didn't necessarily follow all of them. And so their job here is they look at everything from the officer's decision to pursue Anthony, the officer's decision to fire his weapon with a background near a park, around dwellings. They look at, did he put his own self at risk? Did he put his partner at risk? So they're analyzing everything, including, did he have to escalate up to that level of force? And looking at how the officer's actions and the department's actions match up against what policy is. The thing about policy, sometimes it just seems like a guideline, right? It's things always, if they're out of policy, nothing happens. If it's in policy, it's just business as usual.
Well, I mean, and sometimes, you know, at least in Los Angeles, I've seen this in many jurisdictions. What's in policy and what's out of policy are not always in alignment as far as the view of outside analysts, police commission, and certainly the internal review by departments themselves. That's why it always seems to me completely ludicrous to have police departments investigating themselves. When you say some of the policies, you know, from that earlier investigation in 12 years ago were followed and some were not, I mean, give me an example of something outstanding that needs to be, that in your opinion, or in the opinion of the OIR at the time, needed to be changed that has not yet happened.
Well, the benefit of the city re-engaging the OIR group is that one of the recommendations that this chief at that time did take is to initiate an independent review from a group like the ORI, right? So now we have this third party who has no skin in the game. All they're here to do is opine on what happened. And here we are 12 years later, and we see this, you know, and so it gives the public some sense of transparency, but, you know, it also raises a lot more questions. And I think in this instance, the community, you know, the report says that because of how the department behaved and how they conducted the investigation, or the lack of, you know, shortcomings and not interviewing people, that they did a great deal to erode public trust.
Right. So, I mean, that's the top line of your article for the Progressive, that, you know, that I guess the subtitle, Independent Review of the Officer-Involved Shooting of Anthony McClain underscores community mistrust. And I always bring this up only because police, law enforcement and police departments are often talking about how building trust with the community is their priority, and then they do things that don't make it seem like that's their priority at all. For me, trust is built by your actions and how you either take care of or destroy communities. It's not built by having a bunch of nice-sounding policies on a website. So what do you think there is anything happening right now that is building the trust? I don't know how you build trust when you're still killing people. You know, that the trust or mistrust, right, is earned. And I think what the department has laid through, you know, the last several decades is a continuum, as I wrote about in other pieces, and a pattern. And so, you know, when you go back to that policy issue, right, you know, it's questionable if the chief is just rubber stamping the new chief, Chief Harris. You know, yeah, we agree with it, but, you know, hold us accountable to it, you know, and there's no real way. The council doesn't have that authority. Those discretions are solely up to the chief. And so you can't begin to build trust if the community perceives the department as occupying their community and their neighborhood. And then when something like this does happen, a year and a half, 2 years later, we see in black and white their work product. They did not investigate this. They did minimal effort to try to get to the truth, right? And that's what this report does, in essence, it rips the Band-Aid right back off of the community. Because what the department did not do, as some have alleged that the gun was planted, I don't think this report or the department didn't do anything to disprove that the gun wasn't planted. Yeah, well, I mean, okay, we've got news, traffic, and sports right here. But I guess the question is, at this point, what can be done? You know, obviously, Mr. McClain is not coming back. What would be the right thing to do? Would it be another investigation by an outside agency, which is what I think we should do all the time with police killings, officer-involved shootings or beatings? Would it be a statement? Would it be some further legal action? What does justice for Anthony McClain look like at this point? We're talking with journalist James Farr, and you're invited in. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. 2 people are in custody after being arrested during a Monday night protest. Demonstrators in Akron, Ohio were making their voices heard following last week's grand jury decision not to indict officers involved in the killing of African-American Jalen Walker. Akron police say several vehicles were being driven recklessly and that a caravan blocked intersections. Rivers are flooding across the Midwest because of melting snow. The National Weather Service reporting the Mississippi River in Wisconsin is forecast to crest just over 16 feet this week. It's possible this year's rise could result in the worst flood in 20 years in some areas. Most river gauges are already in major flood stage along the river from St. Paul, Minnesota to Davenport, Iowa. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
If you're a late-night snacker, listen up. Buffalo Wild Wings created a menu of late-night food and drinks starting at $4, 10 till close, full of tasty apps and ice-cold beer to wash it all down. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void where prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A frustrating season is over for the Clippers. They lose by 6 in Phoenix last night. The Suns win the first-round series in 5 games. They play Denver in the next round. Gotta give major respect to the Clippers for hanging in there without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They were down 20 in the fourth quarter and got to within 2 in the final 2 minutes. Devin Booker led the Suns with 47 points. Norman Powell had 27 for the Clippers. The Lakers will try to close out Memphis tonight in Game 5. Key question for the Lakers, did they get enough rest after an emotional overtime win Saturday night in Game 4? LeBron played 45 minutes. Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves played 42. The Lakers appear to be healthy. No players are on the team's injury report. Tip-off time at 4:30 on TNT. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
There are millions of boys and girls who are young, gifted, and black.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
The FAA will be hiring air traffic controllers soon. Applications open June 24th through June 27th. If you know someone between the ages of 18 and 30 who might be interested, please tell them to go to www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply today. The salary range is $103,000 to $164,000. There's also paid training and school. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply to be an air traffic controller. This community call to action is brought to you by the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I'm here with Lisa Stevens, Senior Business Consultant with Chase for Business. Lisa, what's one tip you'd give to business owners here in the Crenshaw area?
I love that you asked that question. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up in an area that's very similar to Crenshaw. So this is near and dear to my heart. And if I could only leave a business owner with just one, I would tell the business owner to identify their why. And I think that is so important because your why is going to be that strength on those days where you feel like you're struggling. Your why is going to be that stepping stone. Those days that you want to give up, your why is going to be the reason that you get back up.
And how would you advise business owners looking to acquire capital? What do they need to know before stepping inside the branch to ask for funding?
So 3 things. I do want to share this when it comes to the power of capital and just finding those resources. Understand that capital is a 3-part of a business, right? It's not always about the monetary piece, but if you first put that intellectual, right? What do I need to know? That social, who I need to know, that will help you to then package for that monetary piece. So no matter who you're banking with, you should know your banker. Never walk into a bank and you're transactional only.
It's just like Lisa to drop gems. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
All through your body. Feel me? And God said he should his one begotten son to lead the wild into the ways of the man. Follow me. Eat my flesh of my flesh. Come with me. Hail Mary, run quick, see. What do we have here now?
KBLA Talk 1580. Haven't seen it yet, but looking forward to seeing Dear Mama on Hulu streaming. Story of Feeney Shakur. Rest in peace, Tupac. Rest in peace, Mr. Belafonte. So many powerful people to celebrate and commemorate. James Farr is with us. He's a journalist. He writes for, among other places, the LA Progressive, and recently wrote a story about, the review of the Pasadena investigation of the killing of Anthony McClain. Sadly, one of many hashtags that we know about out of Pasadena. You mentioned Leroy Barnes, Kendrick McDade, and there are others. I just, I was talking with, or texting with, one of the attorneys that worked for the family of Anthony McClain. And I had asked you before we went to News, Traffic, and Sports about further legal action. She says, yes, there's a Part 3 in the works. She's representing Anthony McClain's grandmother, along with the 2 eyewitnesses who were arrested at the scene. Instead of being treated like witnesses, they were treated like criminals. And they are picking up where they left off on the first case. Part 2 of the case with the dad was settled for close to $700,000 a couple of weeks ago. She didn't represent him, but she helped with the depositions and other things. I think it's interesting that, this review is coming out, and here you are highlighting the problems with it right as the family is getting ready to gear up, and those witnesses who were treated like criminals are getting ready to gear up for another round of their legal battles. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Attorney Kerry Harper did a yeoman's job in representing this family and moving them towards, I don't want to say justice, but moving towards some semblance of resolution. And yes, I am aware of the ongoing. I'm glad Kerry chimed in with that. But what we did also learn through the initial reports is that Anthony McClain's DNA was not the only DNA found on that weapon. And that's so problematic. Many have, through analyzing the video, it's obvious that multiple officers and the crime scene was compromised. It was contaminated. There was a lot of movement. And there's no actual video footage that the police department has released of the gun actually being recovered. There's no surveillance footage of the gun actually being recovered. And to the point of what Ms. Harper is alluding to the witnesses, if per policy, if that was a crime or they are alleged to have committed a crime, the department has a duty to preserve that evidence as well. And so that same camera that gave us the same grainy footage that disallows us to necessarily see whether or not Mr. McClain discarded a gun should be the same footage that the department would have that would also show the officers picking up the weapon and show the rest of the evening.
Right.
And so I don't want to be cynical, but it is a comedy of errors.
Yeah. Sounds like a mess. Let's go to the phones. We got Riley calling from Pasadena. Good morning, Riley.
Good morning, and thanks for taking my call. I'm enjoying this conversation with you, Mr. Prima, and Mr. Farr. I get up every morning to hear something like this. But here's my question. I'm a Pasadena resident, and I'm aware of the McClain, McDade killings, and also the brutal beating of Mr. Ballou. And there's always this investigation, these very long, drawn-out reviews and investigations. And what it usually comes down to is missteps, and I'm using that word kindly, missteps done by the police officers. And then after a long period of time, it goes away. Nothing's ever done.
Right.
I don't hear about anything but lawsuits. I don't hear about someone losing their job. I don't hear about anybody being indicted. I don't hear about anything other than, well, yeah, we found out that they didn't do what they should have done. There was some procedural errors here, and then nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. When I hear you speaking, I'm thinking of, just last week I think it was last week, we found out that the cop that shot and killed Breonna Taylor now has a job in a neighboring jurisdiction.
Yeah, and another city in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it is a system. And yes, something that's systemic lets you know that there is a pattern. It's not just in Pasadena. It is. It's all over the nation. And until something is done, my question again is, when is something going to be done? I hope that what happened with the killing of George Floyd and those officers being put in jail, I hope that that's not an aberration.
Yeah.
I hope that becomes more the norm.
Well, it is still more the exception than the rule, but we're starting to see it a tiny bit more, right, Riley? The question is, you say until something is done, what do you see that something being?
I would like to see some reprimand.
Yeah.
For starters, these officers should not, if they lose their jobs, they should not be allowed to go somewhere else and work somewhere else and do the same kinds of things. Because, in my opinion, you're condoning that behavior.
Yeah.
It's less than a slap on the wrist.
Right? I mean, honestly, you or I would do more if we ran a stop sign.
But I don't. It's not happening. It's not, and it's just more of the same.
Well, let me respond to that, Dominic. Thank you so much for the call, Riley. Also, this early morning, one of the recommendations of the 27 recommendations that the OIR group made is that the department should consider an outside independent review when there are critical uses of force, and then to also have that be binding. As it stands now, and I encourage all of your listeners, Dominique, to read the 75-page report. It's not high academic. It's very readable, right? Read this report, because if you don't gasp at what you're kind of looking at and trying to digest, that happens. But it will help folks have a picture. But there's also this other thing called the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. And you could do a whole nother show on that, Dominic.
We have, actually, but yeah. We have on my old program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what Riley is asking for Sounds good, right? But the solutions that ultimately we're looking for on a municipal level will have to be rectified up in Sacramento.
Yeah, and maybe federally, James. I mean, to Riley's point, we have now the officer decertification law that Senator Steve Bradford, put forth with 2 tries. It finally passed. Now, that means an officer can be decertified in California. Presumably, they wouldn't be able to work at any police department in the state. We need a federal system that does that, so they can't just go to Kentucky and join, one of the sheriff gangs there if they have them. I think what we're talking about, what makes it so challenging, to your point, Riley, these patterns existing across the country, is that our Congress won't do anything because of the filibuster and the obstructionism of the Republican Party. We have not been able to pass any meaningful federal law enforcement reform. Continuing our conversation with James Farr, you're welcome to chime in. 800-920-1580. That's how we do it around here. Engagement, reciprocity. 800-920-1580 is KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
This just added to the National Recording Registry. Stick around to find out what queen is getting her flowers. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry. If you guessed Queen Latifah, you guessed right. What is the National Recording Registry? Well, since 1850, the U.S. Library of Congress adds notable recordings to the registry each year. This year, 1980s staple songs like Sweet Dreams Are Made of This and Like a Virgin by Madonna, the Synchronicity album by The Police, the Flashdance theme song, the theme from Super Mario, yep, the video game, and Queen Latifah's full All Hail the Queen album. In total, the registry has upwards of over 600 songs.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
Congratulations to Grace Memorial Chapel and Funeral Home for being this week's winner of KBLA's Office of the Week. Your office won lunch for 10, delivered by the original Taco Pete. Congratulations to Grace Memorial Chapel and Funeral Home.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for voting rights. When We All Vote is a leading national nonpartisan initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase participation in each and every election by helping to close the race and age gap. Created by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizations to register new voters across the country and advance civic education for the entire family and voters of every age to build an informed and engaged electorate for today and generations to come. When We All Vote empowers their supporters and volunteers to take action through voting, advocating for their rights, and holding their elected officials accountable. Please visit whenweallvote.org to stand up for your rights, voting rights. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the Evanon, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with James Farr. He's a journalist and activist. You can see his work at laprogressive.com. Riley brought up a lot of points, James, and I countered. Did you want to follow up on that regarding, we're talking about accountability. I mean, I've heard it said by police chief, actually notably Bernard Parks when he was chief of LAPD, certainly former chief of airports in Santa Monica. James Butts, who's currently mayor of Inglewood, said to me repeatedly, you got to fire people, you got to hold them accountable. Is any police department consistently doing that? You brought up the Police Officers' Bill of Rights. What's your follow-up here?
No, we don't see it, and the Peace Officer Bill of Rights actually prohibits us from knowing even when an officer is fired. And so it's not that the chief cannot, tell the public they fired an officer. That's a different exposure level for the city itself. But accountability, it is desirable. We just don't see it, right? And we see too many examples of constitutional rights being violated here in the department. We see use of force. We see excessive force. We see all of these things. We see officers not activating their body-worn cameras. We see officers compromising crime scenes. None of that rises to the level. Officer Dew McGuindon, while he has not been promoted, he is doing detective's work right now. He's an officer investigator, so they've removed him from the street. But in effect, he's training for his next position. And so what you typically see is those officers who get their knuckles a little dirty, and in this case, a body, they tend to be promoted. That's the culture here in this department. And I challenge anyone in the department to prove otherwise.
I mean, it sounds similar to what we have seen in the LA County Sheriff's Department, actually. And I don't know, I haven't seen any data or anything about that. As far as the national landscape goes, do bodies and beatings lead to promotions or discipline? But certainly, it always surprises me how many times officers remain on the job after seeing things on tape that look very problematic.
It does, and a chief will tell you. I know former Chief Perez, and it's typically a canned answer, right? We don't want to fire the officer prematurely because that creates a liability for the city. The city's going to pay anyway. These officers who are doing this type of conduct, they don't live here.
And what we mean by that is that the taxpayers are going to pay anyway. That's what we mean by the city is going to. Yeah. You and I are going to pay anyway. Is what we mean by that. Yeah,
we've already paid.
You're right, and right, it's really double pay because we're paying the salary of the shooter, and then we are paying for the settlement. Tell me about what's happening May 1st.
May 1st is May Day, although I just received a text message that it is being moved to May 2nd.
Okay.
Pop Pasadena's Organizing for Progress is hosting a Let's Talk, Let's Listen. And what this group, it's led by Brandon Lamar, a very young, progressive millennial who's just making waves in this city and giving us a great deal of hope. But they want to sit down with the community, and we want to unpack what this report says, kind of walk the community through what it says factually. And so then the next step is for this review to go to our Public Safety Committee and then ultimately to our Civil Community Police Oversight, which the Anthony McClain homicide was one of the key precursors to the city actually adopting some sort of oversight of the police. So there's a lot of challenges ahead.
When we come forward, James, I want to hear from you what those challenges are and what we ought to be aware of or even be doing to meet those challenges. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where we're amplifying Black and progressive voices around the clock.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
I won't thank you.
KBLA Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to a lunch for 10, brought to you by the Original Taco Pete's. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA 1580 to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week, sponsored by the Original Taco Pete's, a black-owned restaurant. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to business, Los Angeles County. The Economic Opportunity Grant Program is now open. This program is designed to provide financial support to qualified small businesses, micro entrepreneurs, food industry businesses such as restaurants, and nonprofits in Los Angeles County. Approximately 4,600 grants of up to $2,500 each will be administered to qualified micro businesses that face barriers to accessing capital resources. To learn more about the Economic Opportunity Grant Program, visit www.grants.lacounty.gov. The application process is fast and easy. Don't miss the opportunity to get back to business. This program is administered by the County of Los Angeles through its Department of Economic Opportunity and funded in part through a grant from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. The application portal is powered by Lindustry. Visit www.grants.lacounty.gov and get back to business.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
And James, I gotta before you go into telling us what these challenges are and how we ought to be meeting them, I gotta thank you for the work that you do. I mean, you're very prolific. You're writing all the time. You're well documented in the pieces that you do, and you do a lot of important ones. So thanks for the work you're doing.
And thank you, Tavis and Ariva. You guys, you're my heroes, right? You're who I look to and learn a great deal from. But first, real quick, I know we're short on time, Dominic. I know the late John Kennedy is looking down on our city, his city that he loved, and saying, "This is what I wanted to say, but I couldn't." Right? This is what's happening. And the community is just grateful for Councilmember Hampton, for his tireless leadership and speaking very vocally from the dais and council meetings. And then there's something to be a little bit left to be desired with our vice mayor, who's Felicia Williams, who seems to be a sycophant for the police department. So we got to get our act together up on the dais. Our new chief, he hasn't seen this type of community in his professional career. And it's one thing to interview and come in and they tell you what the problems are, but this city, Pasadena, is different. It's active, and it's active from an activist standpoint. And so the community is going to be looking for more than just rubber stamping. They're going to hold him accountable to his words. But now as it moves forward, this is what the community fight was all about, going back to 2020 oversight. That was the what they held on to. It now will move over to them, and it's in their court, right? And so now we want to see just how much influence they have, how much what recommendations they will make, and how they are going to help this community, if you will, kind of come back together and heal. But we're still a long ways from healing, and the department is a long ways from earning the trust. As I said earlier, right now they've done nothing but earn the mistrust from the community.
James Farr, we got about 60 seconds here. I know we can follow you on Twitter at James Farr Live. How else should we be tracking you? What else do you want to share?
LA Progressive, Google, it's just a simple Google. I'm terrible at all that other stuff, Dominique. I do this work for the story and not the glory. So I'm not worried about likes and clicks. Folks find the truth. I hope they appreciate it.
Well, follow him on Twitter at James Farr Live. While you're at it, follow us, KBLA 1580, everywhere. We're KBLA 1580. And I am DiPrima Radio, DIPRIMA, and then radio. People always call me other things, but the actual name is DiPrima. James, again, thank you for all you do. At the Conversation Live is also, I think, where you are on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. I follow you, so I don't have it memorized. But I think the LA Progressive, LAProgressive.com is really a great resource for folks if you haven't checked it out, LAProgressive.com. Just a range of issues from the national to the local. James Farr, thank you once again.
Thank you, Dominique. Agape.
Agape, indeed. It is a Wealth Building Wednesday around here as well. We'll meet a business person with some innovation, with some blackness, with some small business savvy. That's coming up next. And, of course, your phone calls, 800-920-1580, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. 2 people are in custody after being arrested during a Monday night protest. Demonstrators in Akron, Ohio were making their voices heard following last week's grand jury decision not to indict officers involved in the killing of African-American Jalen Walker. Akron police say several vehicles were being driven recklessly and that a caravan blocked intersections. Rivers are flooding across the Midwest because of melting snow. The National Weather Service reporting the Mississippi River in Wisconsin is forecast to crest just over 16 feet this week. It's possible this year's rise could result in the worst flooding